as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for mini Ice Age conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And I do welcome you this evening, this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you reside on this beautiful blue planet. Petro Bitcoin is how I'm going to start this. This is such a game changer here. Russia to accept Bitcoin as payment for energy exports, now termed quote unquote Petro Bitcoin. Anybody with even the smallest amount of crypto, you're so stoked that you held on to this, because I think this is going to be the run here. That's going to take it all higher, because a rising tide raises all boats. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Ransom, what's going on the planet, man? I'm hoping you're feeling better. And the world is definitely twisting. It's twisting in almost hypersonic speed right now. It's pretty interesting. You know, you and I have been observing quite a few things for years and years and years, but it just seems like it's sped up, and I can't explain it to you other than time is actually moving faster now. Maybe we should start with that. I mean, really, time is moving faster, it appears to most, including myself. So how do you think somebody who doesn't understand that concept is reacting to this speed change of perception and reality? Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? I don't know if I'm coming in good. I'm getting a little garbled sound from you, so maybe there's a bad connection. But yeah, I was reading this this article you sent me. I'm showing everybody right now about the selective service systems tweets in the event of a military draft. And do you remember a couple years ago when they were, trying to change it over where women could be drafted? And
I do remember that.
Did they not?
That was
pass
years. That was several years back.
Yeah. Did they ever? Was that a thing that got passed, or was it just were they trying to? Because think about that. That coincides with everything that's going on right now. And I've been diving into World War I and World War II, and it's like a carbon copy almost, really, the moves.
Oh, isn't it though? Yes, it's so exact. All you have to do is change the names. Even the cities stay the same and the areas of the world stay the same. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, so they're just I guess, and I don't even know if they're going to go ahead with the World War III thing in actuality, but they've already instilled the 1950s 1960s Cold War propaganda fear on everybody. And what's weird is over half of the population, at least according to the corporate media, agrees with yeah, why not, let's just have World War III. It's like everybody on Earth has, cabin fever, and they don't know what to do with themselves. So everybody's really for these apocalyptic things, like whether it's the pandemic or nuclear war. It's just it's the carrot in front of the horse, definitely. And everyone's just following along. I can't find an avenue on the internet that isn't somehow intertwined with the latest BuzzFeed Ukraine. And all that is really is a trigger moment for them to blame what they already had planned, which was massive food shortages. And now you got the White House just straight up warning people about it. But I had an article, I think last time I talked to you, actually, where they were already talking about to get prepared. White House expects inflation will substantially increase in the coming months. And now they're talking about, we should all starve to death because Putin's bad.
Wait a second. Hold on. Those kind of statements just put me off my fresh fried lobster, Ransom.
Well, I'm not feeling any. It's something that's going to happen, and it's just going to catch so many people off guard. People that don't, think about what would happen if everything just turned off. And then on top of that, that's a major talking point right now. A cyber attack, biological attack, biological attack. And I was curious enough to find out where all of these labs are everywhere. So interestingly enough, a lot of the websites that keep track of them have a big blank spot in Eastern Europe, even though recent revelations, we kind of know that there's a bunch in there too. So it seems like there may be, and this is just cookie conspiracy theory, a set plan with the same people that have been running things to go ahead and start reducing the population right in front of everyone. And not only that, getting more than half of the population to volunteer for it. There's a big deal on Drudge Reports. One of the top headlines is the new male contraceptive that's 99% effective. So the entire civilization of the Western world is already on the brink of not reproducing enough to replace itself. And now with all these infertility problems with women and men, now you have, volunteers. Everybody's volunteering to call it quits. Might as well have a nuke war. And maybe that'll help with the food shortages that are being broadcast also as another major propaganda thing. The only thing I think with this propaganda thing is the rest of it's the falsity, and the food shortages is the only real down to earth thing that people are going to start feeling all over the world. And actually, I've been reading article after article already. The Middle East is supposedly suffering, India and other places, that all of these deals are breaking down between countries. They're no longer wanting to trade with each other, which obviously means, in my opinion, that the fiat currency system is the main target for this transition right now. So they're going to blame the supposed war on Russia, which, by the way, 2/3 of what's out there as far as video is kind of old stuff. And again, they're using video game, like we live in the metaverse already, and I guess people can't tell the difference, but they're using several video games as propaganda about how good the war is going against Putin. And it's really laughable, because it seems like Putin is totally involved, and this is just a move to strategically move stuff around so that they could end the petrodollar, which all of a sudden the West agrees with now. So it seems like the people that are supposed to be playing on our side have already switched over to the other side.
I'm going to throw a strange idea about that. You said cyber attack. Okay, well, why do they keep saying that? Why do they keep saying cyber attack? Well, let me throw my explanation of why and what it will result in. So a lot of people are thinking internet, as in Google services, etc., going down. But shall I tell you what has happened? Germany and Deutsche Bank uses Russian IT providing services of 25%. I did not know this. Of all stock market, bond market, commodities markets, real-time quotes, not only for me and you that could buy services or get an upgraded trading platform with an API plugin to trade off multiple accounts, such as Coinigy for crypto traders out there. That kind of level of service is what you consider what a normal person would use. That's, into trading a little bit, not the novice or the non-trader. But then you step up levels where you go to trading houses where they're trading on algorithms with thousandth of a second execution times. Well, that software coming through, when I say stock market quote, you're probably stuck back going, yeah, every few seconds it changes, or every 1 second. No, they're down to like 10,000th of a second changes in this on the real-time market trading, because the algorithms are pushing so much that they're able to push buttons so much faster. And even on like 1/100th of a penny move, they're still making thousands or millions of dollars. And the algorithms are running the markets now, not humans anymore, which I feel is, just they're looking at ways to extract wealth like BlackRock does. But 25% of all of that service comes from Russia. And here's the thing. Not only are they the providers of it, but they're the developers and the bug fixers of that same software that runs 25% of the market. And guess what? It just got cut off prior to the nickel on the COMEX, or excuse me, over in the London Metals Exchange debacle. And then nickel up 15% today, stopped trading yet again. See, 25% of the world's trading markets are broken because they can't get real-time quotes anymore. So what type of interconnected market do we have where the quotes coming in, even if it's like 10% of the total market, whether it be Japan or China or anywhere, Thailand, for example, or India or United States or Europe, it doesn't matter. If just even 2% of the market trading is not in real time, it's a non-functional market. But now we're trending way toward 20% of all markets across the world, and especially over into Europe, are not getting the real-time quotes. So everything's broken anyway. Like there's no bringing it back. Humpty Dumpty broke so far down the wall, just about 10,000 foot cascading in and down the side of a Himalayan mountain and crashing at the bottom and falling off a 1,000-foot cliff, and then boulders rolling on top and smashing that Humpty Dumpty is about how smashed the markets are now because they can't get real-time quotes in. Cannot continue without this functionality. But Deutsche Bank's pretty much locked up, but the rest of the planet's locking up in fashion. So the London Metals Exchange has not fixed their issues with anything in the nickel trading, and it just never got. That's why it limit up again today, 15%. It's been limit up every single day since this has gone offline, and they pulled back all those trades to save the Chinese billionaires. So now you even understand the markets themselves can pull back trades if you get a gain, but the big boys don't. If the Chinese billionaires are getting wiped out, they're going to reverse you, Ransom, and Mai's trades because we would have gained on that, and then they put it over into the billionaire side. And this awareness is already here, along with the market making breakdown, and now the trust of anything can be reversed if it's causing too much duress to an elitist that's a billionaire. Really, in real time, they're reversing trades because the billionaire is losing too much money, and now your gain is back to a zero. This is what's happened in these last 2 weeks. So what I call it, and I'm over here on Zero Hedge. The reason I brought this up is, you mentioned Zero Hedge. Well, here, this headline right here: Trading House Margin Call Doom Loop. Doom Loop. Because every single commodity in turn is going to have the same thing and is in motion of it now, along with the bonds. Have you noticed like I don't trade bonds, and I really am not very versed on bond trading compared to what I might know about crypto or commodities. But the bond prices and the bond percentages have just been going completely ape, never seen before kind of movements. It's all related to what you're seeing with the breakdowns here. So would it not be prudent to call or create a cyber attack, because the markets can't work anymore anyway? So if you're thinking they're just going to take down Google and, I can't surf my movies, I can't watch my Netflix, can't get my Google. Well, how about they are taking down the entire financial system because it already can't continue functioning because the 25% of that whole IT comes from Russia that's been cut off. So you see about the rest of the world, it just can't function without that software at the speed it's moving now. So what do? You have choice A or B. Choice B is completely collapse it because it's not functional. Choice A is telling everybody it's not functional and trying to get them to agree to stop it and kind of fix it, but everybody will see what they did with the billionaires, switching the trades back on the positive side. It's just that the confidence is completely lost. I mean, completely lost. So there's no way. I just don't know what's going to happen, but cyber attack makes sense for me to cover that.
Yeah, it kind of fits right into their plan, and they already have the boogeyman set up, so they're already kind of predicting programming. And if I'm not mistaken, they've already claimed several companies have been cyber attacked, so it wouldn't be much to expand that to the stock exchange or some of these other things that's going off to help what the IMF is trying to do. Like right here's a one from Zero Hedge about they're warning the countries that the dollar reserve is in response to U.S. sanctions. So all these countries are wanting to change their, financial thing, and they're scared to go with Brinks and all these other things. So they're going to go in the route of digital currency. And wouldn't it be weird if, all of the stocks, cryptos, and things like that, all of this digital stuff is not only cyber attacked, but you know, you can have the power down so that there will never be any explanations or, you know, investigations really to what happened, and they can reset everything. So they can straight up reset the wealth of each dollar in each country to whatever they want it to be. They print the money, and they don't want the paper money in the first place. Here's another one. Well, can U.S. consumers weather commodity shock driven recession impulse? Meaning that you know, we're going to be trying to buy all of this stuff, and it's going to make stuff crash like 2008. But that was nothing. And you know, I know a lot of people are old enough to remember, and I'm not old enough to remember it, but I saw a lot of video footage of it, and I remember my dad talking about it when I was little, about how bad the gas prices got, and then it's full circle when I'm an adult. Where the gas prices are crazy. So they're trying to shut down any bit of industry or internal trading that might be going on around the government. So, you know, like a lot of people are talking about making these communities and things like that, but your community is not going to do much trade when it's hard to get gasoline, period, and everything's shut down due to war propaganda or the latest outbreak, or the most likely scenario is just that they end the petrodollar and the US dollar collapses and they reset what it's worth all of a sudden, and what people think they own in the bank and all of these things will all be reset. So um, good luck, I guess. But it is kind of scary when the president of the United States, which I would say doesn't tell the truth that often, is telling the truth about certain things. Like if you remember Obama, he was talking about that they would necessarily have to hike all of the power prices on everything, and they would just necessarily have to go up. And people kind of shrugged that off, but that's exactly what they did. And now they're doing it in 10 times fold at the same time as stealing wealth. I think the last decade was really about getting people to lose their inherited wealth. And now whatever wealth that they thought they had based on jobs and bank accounts may not be worth anything. There's real no place to hide if you're a portfolio manager. Just like you said, you can just go down the different avenues of making money, and all that they're saying is doom and gloom and hide your money. So it makes me think that they are about to totally reset, and it makes sense. Just like Klaus Schwab said, it's the great narrative. They gave us a narrative, and people believe it, and they'll do whatever the kind of trends tell them to do. I hope people are just, you know, going around the system and setting up things they know they don't need other people to help them do. That's what I'm doing. I spent all day out trying to plot out this next year of growing and figuring out what I could do to save money, save water, and see if I can you know, flourish when others are, you know, having financial problems. And I think, you know, I mean, not to be condescending, but I feel sorry for a lot of people that don't know how to do construction. They don't know how to do their own automotive work. They don't know what to do with food, you know. So I've spent my life messing around with each kind of thing, and now I feel pretty confident that no matter what happens, I'm okay with at least my tools and my seeds and what I got going on.
Well, it sounds like you had a fun day then. That sounds really fun, getting out on the land and, you know, just allowing your mind to run wild with possibilities of what you can grow there, what you can do there. Put the colored fruits over there, put the yellow tomatoes over there, the orange peppers over here, the purple peppers over there, the blooming flower medicines, echinacea over there, cover hills. You know, you can do anything. Like, what do you really want to eat? Because there's massive, you know, I'm looking at some stuff here, lettuce shortages in California, but that is so easy to grow yourself. Like, there should be no lettuce shortage anywhere. That is one of the easiest things to grow, lettuce. Oh my gosh. And so many types too, for arugula, romaine, whatever. A lot of the leafier green lettuces, some of kind of those purples that are in there, you know, I don't know the name of every single lettuce, but you know, there's quite a few that are, they're very supple and easy to grow as long as you keep them moist and out of the direct sunlight and keep them warm enough. You can trim those leaves and continue to get a yield off of it. You don't need to pull the whole plant, just a couple, you know, if you have 25, 30 plants going, just trim 1 or 2 leaves off of each plant. Work down the rows. Then you got your spinach and Malabar spinach. Anybody doing morning glory this year? So leafy greens should be the least of our worries, but I can't believe with how easy it is to grow leafy greens that there is a leafy green shortage right now, especially from California. Are people so stuck into the system and plugged in that they don't know that they can grow their own lettuce? And even just a tray doing microgreens, or bringing tiny little seeds up in the first week and a half of growth, so they start that small plant and then you cut it and you eat it as a leaf salad itself. Like, where is the education in this? So I can't believe that we're coming into food shortages when there's so many easy things to get micronutrients and fresh greens into everybody's body in the country. Doing it yourself with like 15 minutes of work in the entire process of putting the soil in the tray, laying your seeds down there, spraying it, covering it until they sprout, and then, as they're growing in the first couple weeks, make sure you keep them watered at the base if you can. Keep them ventilated, keep a fan on it. You got to press play, you got to turn on the fan, and you have to watch them with the water. And it's really that easy. And you can grow your own salads anywhere you want. You can do multiple trays at a time with no sunlight. Because when a seed's underground trying to grow, it doesn't need light. It's going through the soil to try to get to the light. So those first 7 to 10 days, seeds grow without light to begin with, but they flourish better on the probably 7th day if you start giving them some light, whether it be grow lights in your house or actually taking them out into visit the spring sunlight. But anyway, I'm super glad you did that, because, they don't even need this global war thing to make a lot of people die off. They just need to keep you distracted enough until the famines hit. That's it. Food nationalism, that is going to be the new thing. So if you remember the oil embargo, like Ransom, you talked about waiting for, gas with your dad. I waited with my parents too. Everybody had to get in line. You saw all the pictures from before. Look up like 1972 or something, oil embargo, gas lines at the gas stations. And you look at the prices too, and it was like 75 cents. Oh, it went up to $1 back then. People were freaked out. It went up to $1. Here it was like $10 in California, it was $9 in California, I saw. But here's the thing. Food nationalism is the next shoe to drop. As the oil will be cut off or nationalized or rediverted in pipelines or ships or whatever, food's going to be something different. I've already seen what's like the 6th country that said they're not going to export their food now. So where does that leave us? That major exporters in the world are saying they're not going to export now. And Ukraine has not received its planting seed for the corn crop. Because here's how it works. With the licensing agreement, when you're using Syngenta or Monsanto, you get the GMO seeds every 1 year. They give you a new seed supply that you need to buy from your vendor or your supplier in your farm community. But that didn't make it to Ukraine. Like, the whole planting seed thing's not there. And the Roundup Ready GM variety requires glyphosate to, put on the rows at the same time you're planting the seed. So neither of those are there. 0% of 0 is 0. And Ukraine's a huge, major, gigantic exporter of corn along with Russia and wheat, both. Depends the season. But that doesn't look like it's coming. So all I got to say is you don't need the world war. You just don't need it. You could like freak people out in the mind thinking it might start, but you don't need it. You just stop the fertilizer in the food and create food nationalism, and everything else is solved for you. Humans are going to do their thing. They're going to get panicky. They're going to buy. They're going to fight in the stores, martial law, and troops will be in the stores with your digital rationing card so you can get it. You got to control the masses, man. Never let a good crisis go to waste. That's all they say, right? And this is a good crisis right here. A good one.
You're really right about the greens thing. Sometime last year, I started just throwing, potato cuts and onions and just different stuff that came from the supermarket that was organic stuff. And I'm sure that it was full of glyphosate and all that stuff. Even being organic coming from the supermarket, just being around all the other fruit and through the transit and being through the same supply chain distribution, they put it through the same factories and all that. So it still picks up an amount of poison, even if it's organic. But we would save all of that, and I've been doing it right now, like all your romaine lettuces and stuff like that. You just leave a couple inches at the bottom and put it in some water, and then a couple days later I've been putting it outside, and mind you, this is during cold weather, like freezing temperatures and snow. I've been putting it outside under these little plastic storage bins that you get from Walmart. Some of them are clear, some of them are colored or whatever, but they all seem to work pretty good. They let the infrared light in, and it keeps it at a tolerable temperature for these greens. And so now that's spring's about to be here. I already have 4 inch, row 4 inch tall romaine lettuce in rows, and I have all of these onions, potatoes that are covering the ground under where I put the plastic containers. The potato plants have been, already growing. So there's ways to even get a head start. So like if you live north, more north than me, and you're still expecting frost to come in, you can start doing that now. And the stuff responds because it just needs those couple of degrees and a little bit of protection. And then every time we have a warm, sunny day, I go out there, of course, and treat them like pets. Also, with the ones I have inside, just, preparation for spring. You already got half-grown plants that you can just plop in the ground, and if it's nice soil, anything, they usually do pretty good, and they just pop right back to life and then explode outside, and you're like already rocking and rolling with rows of greens and stuff. And this is well before it gets hot. And yeah, there's no reason that you shouldn't be at least recycling what you get from the store and then regrowing it in some soil outside. And that takes literally no effort, especially for onions. You just keep the little end that the roots came on and go out there and bury it. You really don't even have to do anything. Even in the middle of winter, the onions will pop up, start growing on the warm days. It's pretty cool. And then filling your yard, which I know some of my neighbors. I'm glad I don't live in a homeowners association area or whatever. I know my neighbors just see it as a bunch of weeds, but I've been growing cilantro and all of this stuff, fill it, and wild clover, as many flowers as you can get. So, and what I found is that it has to be a perfect harmony with nature, because even just doing a little bit of stuff outside like that, all of the animals show up at your house. Like I've all of the doves, and I get like salamanders that are supposed to be rare and extinct, almost going extinct in New Mexico, and they're popping up in my garden because there's all of these roly polies and life just from recycling everything. And I started gardening only 2 years ago, and now this year I haven't even planted anything in the ground, and I already have a bunch of boxes that are overgrowing with food right now. So that's pretty awesome. So, and it's what I call minimal effort gardening. So people with a lot of land, and you have time to just walk around in nature. Not only one is it a great meditation while you're out there focusing on each little plant, getting to know them. But like it's good for your health and everything. You're outside, you're in the sun, and then the reward of actually going back to each one of these plants, remembering its strife all year, and then getting some kind of delicious earth grown, organic, awesome food that's free for the most part. I mean, not counting your effort. And that is exactly the kind of lifestyle, if kind of read back in history, that started and made every great civilization flourish. And then it turned to the dark side, the war side, kind of like what we're doing right now for a reset to cull everybody. And I mean, if you don't see that that's happening right now through so many different avenues, it's like a well-oiled machine. We're being attacked, like from so many different angles. Mental propaganda, poisoning of the water, the food. You got the pharma coming from all kinds of different ends. Like with pills and shots, and it never ends. And then you look into like even what you're wearing is contaminated with all of these toxins. And it's, I don't think, an accident that most of these products have been coming from China for the last 20 years. It's a very smart strategy to throw carcinogens on accident every so often in stuff. And we've kind of seen that in the news. They had the baby food thing. And what me analyzing what's going on, I feel like that there were some traitors in our government. I don't know how far back, but it's been happening for at least decades, and they've slowly incrementalized switching to the other side of politics, which is not on the independent freedom side, but on the world's governance side. And they're selling us out right now because they've weaseled their way into every little position possible in our form of governments in the Western world. You're getting, you know, uh, both ends of it. People are getting cancer out the wazoo, and that's probably large in part simply from not eating these fresh greens and vegetables that you could grow yourself. So from that end all the way to the other end, they're just being attacked and attacked. It's a very toxic world. And you notice that the lefties or the Greenpeace type of people or any of that stuff that are trying to save the environment from carbon pollution never talk about the genetic and chemical pollution and the actual deforestation of our planet, because that would really wake you up about what's going on. We don't have a problem with carbon dioxide, obviously, that's plant food. However, we do have a problem with clear cutting forest and dumping pollution wherever they can. Everything from like fluoride in the water. Those companies that work with that fluorosilicic acid, or if I pronounced it right, they're not allowed to just go dump that stuff in a lake. So, it goes to your municipality. So you could pay for doing it to yourself. How about that?
Sludge is good for you. Come on, man. Sludge is good for you. That's actually the title of a book I read from the 1950s when I was living in Hawaii that a guy gave me and said, dude, you got to read this book about how corrupt it was. Now, the story that I had heard from him, and he was working in Hawaii also, looking at runoff from golf courses and what kind of algal blooms that was causing off the coast that was then killing the sea life because, well, algae blooms smother sunlight and smother reefs. So he was out doing that, and then he got threatened off the island and whatnot, and I totally understood what he was talking about. It changed him the way that, thinking bringing this kind of information to light would, set Hawaii free from all the pollution on the reefs and bring back the ecosystem of life that you're talking about too. But think about the underwater environment, reef environment that was getting choked out, and then runoff from golf courses and, runoff from sugarcane fields where they was at Maui Land and Pine had quit planting all the sugarcane over thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of acres on the side of the volcano. But before, it was totally green when they were in operation and they had every square inch covered. Man, there was no erosion. Days were amazingly clear, like unbelievable clear days. And then they stopped planting. And the entire of those same tens of thousands of acres were unplanted and turned into a giant dust storm every time the winds would blow. But this guy, with the same thing with the runoff, like, dude, you can't just stop planting on the thing. Look at the erosion and all that, and running in the water too and choking reefs. But back to the golf course, you would have thought by bringing the awareness of how much pollution golf courses were pushing into the oceans, killing the marine life, that would have been like a wow, okay. You guys got to maybe use some natural fertilizers or something. You can't be just, dissing the sea life everywhere. These golf courses were just dead zones everywhere around them. Okay, you thought that'd be happy news, right? But no, it affected the economy too much, even to the point where the politicians were against the information coming out. Yet they're out of the side of their mouth to be like, oh, green agenda, we're a green company, blah, 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 right? This whole green thing with the companies, yet how many millions of way more than millions of, how about hundreds of millions of tons of plastics are floating in the oceans, decomposing around. Oh, but they're so green at Coca-Cola. They're so green at Pepsi, but they polluted all. Wait a minute. What about the oceans with all plastics, dude? Oh, no, we're green. Look at the flags. But that was one of my first big wake-up calls into the environment and the environmental thing. And The Sludge is Good for You is one of the books that he recommended that I read after he was telling me his story about having so much problem bringing that information out from the pollution from the golf courses in Hawaii. So reading that book, Sludge is Good for You, oh my gosh, I still never will touch tap water drinking that stuff ever again, ever. And that was from a book from the 1950s. My gosh, how much worse has it gotten? I don't know, but that book from the 50s, Sledge is Giving, it's got a crazy cover on there, like Happy Family, 3 Mile Island, Love Canal, all wrapped into, you got to drink it because it's good for you. Government loves you, man. Government loves us all.
Yeah,
They love us
DDT
all.
is good for you and me. They always used to tell everybody everything bad was good. From smoking to the mosquito, killer they're spraying all over.
DDT, my favorite
Yeah, yeah.
breakfast drink.
Um, I sent you this article over, and I wanted to get your opinion on that. Speaking of the green agenda, and the title of it is, it's from The Intercept. The title of it is Biden administration drafting order to invoke Defense Production Act for green energy storage technology. Now, that doesn't really sound that bad, but it kind of sounds to me like he's invoking a military control uh, uh, of,
To force
you
you to
know,
green. That makes no sense.
yeah, that's like right on its face, to invoke Defense Production Act for green energy storage. So right away, that sounds like they're going to be using the Defense Department to enforce green rules on you, where you can't use energy. But you get into the article, and it talks about how Defense Production Act is going to be used to ramp up mineral production for electric car batteries. Now, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about drones? Are we talking about stuff like that? Because um, as you remember, in World War II, they converted a lot of factories, not only here, but in Germany, over to military production factories. And actually, if you look into the Cold War, there were a lot of people here financing like ready-built pop-up structures and things like that, so they could build stuff in Russia in this same, this whole same thing where they took over manufacturing, so that Russia could produce, motors and different stuff that we sold them, so that the Cold War could really, amp up. And I kind of see that right here. But I also hear in there, when we're talking about ramping up mineral production, is where are we going to get it? And are we talking about rare earth elements? In which case, that's obviously a direct, headbutting with China. So things are getting really spooky with the people that are in control of stuff. If you notice, they get everybody, so distracted with war that behind the scenes they're coming up with all these new acts and bills to give themselves more power and to change over our whole society. So what do you think about this whole? I mean, literally changing over what was supposed to be just a lobby kind of sector, trying to get government to change over, is now being talked about in a Defense Production Act. I mean, just the name of it, for God's sakes.
Well, that's fascism at its highest. Because at that point, you and me, the citizens, will be forced to buy a green product. We'll be forced. There'll be no other way around. Okay, we're going to remove everything and have to use this green product. Okay, that's bad enough as it is, because they're going to take away things that you already own outright with no debt on them and replace them with things you need to get debt to get again. You think those solar panels are going to be free? Of course not. What if you already have your home paid for and your oil heaters paid for and you get your gas and your gas lines are in there and it's all paid for? You don't even need, all you have to do is pay property tax and you're free and clear. Well, now they're going, no, you got to have 100 solar panels on your property now. That's $60,000. That's bad enough in itself that you're going to be forced to buy the product. But what it brings it into fascism here is the government's going to use that War Powers Act to then choose the industry players and the companies that are chosen to manufacture all of that. And the mining companies as well. Do you think they're going to be just randomly David and Ransom's mining company mining rare earth minerals with our political affiliations and non-belief in systems? And I should say non-political affiliations, or I should say more belief of how the system is rigged against. But they just come in, okay, well, yeah, Dave and Ransom, you can sell your rare earth minerals into our no. It's coming right down to, you're a stock market listed company. Only there will be no medium-sized or small mines out there. It will be only under corporate control. And those inputs chosen by the government under that same act will be funneled to the companies and manufacturers and factories chosen by the government also under that same act. And then they'll charge you whatever they want to force you to buy that. And see the whole way along from who's chosen to do the mining, who's chosen to do the manufacturing. You think that's going to be a random choice? Of course, that's going to be a pay to play the entire way down. Government controls industry was the way, but now it's industry controlling government. Do you think they did that War Powers Act just because they did? No way. You got to look at it as if I could make trillions, not billions anymore, trillions of dollars off the conversion of anything fossil fuel to green forced under the government, compliance to the citizens. I want to be in the middle too, man. That's a manufacturing trillion-dollar gold mine, literally, between government mandate and you, the citizen. Trillions in the middle there. And what's that going to do for you or me? It's just going to impoverish people again. If you're free and clear of debt, what are they going to do? Run up a 20, 30% interest rate on 50%, 100% interest rate on getting, if you don't pay it off in the first year, it's going to be double next year. Oh, wait, you know what I mean? Once they try to convert this over, they're going to get everybody with debt again, probably under the new system after this financial collapse. Somebody will, set up a new system with a new dollar or whatever it's going to be called, new valuation system, 1 = 1, to get you to buy this green product forced under the War Powers Act. I don't know. Maybe that's a little outlandish. Maybe I'm thinking too much. I don't know.
No way. That's exactly what they've been trying to do for a very long time already, and it seems like they're about to streamline it. Also, and then that brings in mind, physical wars or threat of wars, because I actually think that that's what this is about. They couldn't figure out, they meaning whoever is really running the global establishment, could not figure out which way they wanted to go. I think the pandemic kind of started flopping earlier than they planned it to. So they give us this new scenario, which is really a rerun. Because they had people ducking and covering and little cartoons going, and people were really bothered by it. They made bunkers and storm shelter conversions over to bomb shelters. People were really focused on that for a long time. And my dad used to tell me it was all nonsense. It was just a tool to keep you from thinking or worrying about anything important. And I believe that is true, exactly. And I'm looking at article after article talking about how they can control the schooling and the colleges and the internet connection by kind of hijacking your identity and already having a persona of you in the metaverse, and that people will live their lives in the metaverse according to Mark Zuckerberg of the Meta Corporation, the metaverse, which it doesn't. It's funny that they rename their company that just in time for the metaverse, which actually doesn't mean that it belongs to that company. They're talking about the whole new internet reset, which is a total immersion into a virtual reality system, nothing like what me and you are doing now. And they've actually been practicing this technology alongside of regular internet using Wi-Fi and things. So the computer and your lights, your little LED lights that were super green, actually have chips in them that produce a flicker rate along with your television, your tablet, your droid, and they're sending whatever that is at you. But they practice this stuff with primates, and they know just the right tones and frequencies to kind of melt you down. If you remember, they kind of got caught. Was it the late '90s? They got caught, I think, with one of their programs. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. But they had the whole Pokemon thing where millions of kids were watching that. And for some reason, like hundreds of kids just, had all of a sudden epileptic seizures. And now I'm reading, articles by people at TED Talks and watching TED Talks about how the human being is now completely hackable, meaning that they have softwares. They have genetic gene editing softwares all the way to actual like light viruses that they can attack you with. They're claiming that they already have essentially summed up everyone into the system, and they don't even know it yet. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's what the technocrats are preaching now. And usually when they start doing that, they start unfolding their program quite rapidly. And they have these little games. I'm sure you saw the what was it called? The Bill and Melinda Gates through there. I forget the name of it. I made a parody of it, actually. The little conference they had in 2019 that told us we were all gonna, they practiced the whole thing with a coronavirus, and they even talked about the connection between AIDS and the drugs needed for both of them would be similar, and all these weird things. I forget what was that called there? That big O. It's totally fake though, even though it really just happened right afterwards. Here, I know
The
somebody in the
computer
chat.
exercise.
No,
What
they
was a
hired
gamed out
actors.
exercise?
Yeah, they hired actors. They hired fake news.
Yeah, pandemic.
The whole thing. It was like a pre-show. Like when you watch.
Event 201's the real name for it.
That's right.
But
That's
they
right.
gamed it all out. So, when they gamed it all out, it turned into the pandemic after that. I mean, really, if you go back, I'll tell you, it's a 6-part video series. And it goes
Yeah.
through each part from initial hospital overruns to, getting the medical industry on board, to controlling the narrative in the media on how to, control it. And then there were supply chain issues involved with it. Like, they gamed it all out way before any of these things that we saw. And we saw them come to life in real life right then, exactly how they gamed it out. That's crazy. That's why they call it a pandemic.
Do you wonder if they have other events like that, like say nuclear war with Fallout and what they'll do with that? And we just didn't get those videos because they didn't put that public. I wonder if they went through all of that trouble to hire actors to play like their government officials and people to pretend like they're specialists in different fields. I mean, the whole thing was wacky. It really looked like I had this program that I used for my son when he was homeschooling when he was littler, and they played these little movies like that where a fake doctor would tell him what chemistry's about or DNA or whatever, and it looked exactly like one of those. Like they hired the same company and that we're all children, so they and then they put that out there for everybody to watch, and nobody really thought it was a big deal until afterwards, of course. But don't you wonder if they have these same things for whichever scenario that they're wanting to play out? And they're just, because every bit that they give us is always related to television. Like here's an article I'm showing everybody: Putin war gadgets, robo balls that look like Star Wars BB-8 ready to deploy. They're catching the imagination.
Are you speaking English? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, so it's things that Star Wars nerds would know, and then at the same time, you were talking about speed, time kind of speeding up. The events are actually doing that, and these guys that are spending billions trying to prove that there's antimatter and black holes and all of this stuff, they're talking about quantum leaps are not instantaneous. Actually, they take a long time. Just some physics, so we're kind of in that little portion that's going to be a long haul, but yet time feels like it's just rolling along real fast. I cannot believe that I actually made it into the future. I feel like I live in that futuristic movie that I saw when I was a kid. I mean, there's a number of them, and I live in it, and it's so bizarre that all of these things are real. The tracking, the the AI, all of it, even down to the bots are about to be majorly deployed. I've been telling people that for a long time. I just saw an article the other day that was talking about this little robot that you buy to take care of your mom or your nana when you don't want to talk to her or keep her company, and it's just like the movie I, Robot. And then you got Tesla bot, and they're claiming that it's going to be the most sophisticated thing that the world has ever seen. So there's a lot of indications that this reset is real. And when we come out on the other side of it, it'll be like an alien planet that anybody that's old enough to have lived in this prior time, they just won't recognize it. It'll be just like you time travel to the future.
I'll try time travel back to, say, Little House on the Prairie and just chill. And I'll wait for the next 150 years to unfold without all this Klaus Schwabiness. But you know what? Really, Ransom, I don't identify as a primate. I identify as a spirulina algae. So for me, I want to know what type of environmental grant I can get to feed myself and study myself because I identify as spirulina algae. To come back to a prior comment, you said we're all primates. Well, I do not identify as a primate. No way. Spirulina algae right here.
Yeah, you might get a discount for being green though. I mean,
That could be the way to go, right? You can claim you that you're anything that you want to be.
get hired by the Defense Department to help with their new green initiative. The whole thing, the whole idea when the government comes up with these new initiatives and bills, acts, and executive orders are really scary things. Like if you just wanted to terrify yourself and forget about woo woo and what things that you think are conspiracy theories, and just go back to like what do you think, Kennedy, and just start reading every executive order ever given by a president, and you'll be terrified by the end of it at what kind of country you actually have been living in all this time. But now they're just pulling it out in front of you, and all of the younger people just don't remember the old way of things. And that was funny because the last generation kind of took for granted their elderly people that were doing all of these farms and growing. I remember all of the people that my grandparents knew, they all had food growing in the front and the back, and they're old and they can barely move around and they're still tending garden. And then you go over their house and they're having supper, and half of it they pulled out of jars that were from 3 years ago, and it's delicious.
I remember my grandparents, and they were, got older as I was, a teenager, to the point where they were in their 70s by that age, both of us. But growing up, they were so conservative, and I didn't understand why they weren't with the new world that I was in. That they seemed disconnected into another world, literally into another world. They had a farm, and we would go every summer and repaint their house and then help with the garden. And I was with my cousins, and we did it every year, every summer, weeks to a month, maybe 6 weeks, something like that. If you decided to chill out and hang out with the grandparents, we all helped out there. Ponds to clean, hedgerows to get off to, go visit the neighbors, do all kind of stuff. And that was really like a disconnected world to where I was, but now I understand it because I'm at that point going, fuck, I just can't believe they're just so disconnected down there at the these new kids. I can't even believe how disconnected it is to the reality of what I see compared to the disconnection at where they're at the primary levels down there, or even coming into, grade school. It's ridiculously disconnected. But I look and I see the exact same thing. Now I understood it in like the last 2 weeks. For some reason, I never saw it, but now I understand what my grandparents were seeing too. That transition point where we were becoming freaks as younger kids, because they're like, you're completely disconnected from like what happened in World War II and the whole banking crisis and the collapse and all that stuff and the depression. And everybody lived through that. Everybody had lived. Everybody knew that depression. Man, they saved everything. So at that point, when they saw, reckless spending or kids being idiots, no responsibilities, no chores, you're not up at 4 milking cows or 5, whatever, they were just like, you guys are lazy and unbelievable because you have, and I could see, I saw what they saw in these last 2 weeks about, trying to grow your own food and people down there in the metaverse, man. It's unbelievable, the disconnect here, really, the disconnect of preparing to grow your own food because we're coming into a famine on the planet, and you got a bunch of people down in the younger generation that's stuck there on this thing around their head and the whole wearable tech, man. I was like, oh, then not even, it's really, the two worlds have split again here is what I'm seeing right in front of me in real time.
Yeah, did you see all those guys trying to make the garden out there in Oregon? All the people that took the little spot, it was really funny.
They did, but they put plastic under the roots and then cover that with mulch. Clover will grow in that, no problem. You could eat the clover leaves and that's a leafy green. But if you want the roots to go deeper, you definitely need to cut the plastic. Get rid of the plastic. But anyway, we'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. David Dubine and Ransom Godwin. Freedom's Films Talk Garden. When we get back, let's talk about some gardening.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's iPhone Maker. Welcome to the crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for free association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm joined tonight, Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films. Along right here, David Dubine, Adapt 2030. Identify as a primate? No, not anymore. I identify as a spirulina algae. And I'm wondering what type of environmental grant I will get to study myself if I identify as a spirulina algae. Not as a primate. That's why I appreciate freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, for allowing me free speech just like this. I don't know if that would pass on any type of social platform anymore to say I don't identify as a primate, I identify as spirulina algae, and if that would get me flagged for some kind of weird content violation. So if you support free speech, please support Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Donate tab. You got PayPal? Awesome. Crypto? Better. As we're moving into a new crypto world, post-dollar. And you know, what does post-dollar world mean to us? Well, it means your money's not going to buy as much, so you're going to have to be more self-sufficient. And you know, Ransom and I, before the break, we're talking about some gardening techniques and whatnot. And you know, I'm gonna put words in Ransom mouth. And he was saying, you know, during the what was happening in Seattle when they started a garden in that zone, I forget the name of the zone. They were growing things like marigolds and houseplants and things that were non-edibles, but it was an attempt to grow a garden. And it was an attempt to show self-sufficiency, but there was plastic under the wood chips or the mulch that they were using. Now, see, before the break, I was saying you could still grow clover on that mulch layer because the roots would reach deep enough down, and then clover in itself, if you're growing enough clover, that is a leafy green. You know, you can eat clover leaves. They taste a little citrusy though. But still, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, all these things in clover leaves, incredibly heavy. Dandelions as well. You know, all those yellow flowers that are coming out right now across lawns, or will be in the next month or so, as long as you're not spraying your yard with chemicals, you can eat those flowers. Those yellow flowers coming off the dandelion are just superfoods in themselves. Like there's a huge amount of food coming out at this point, just naturally. Learn how to wild forage. I mean, look how much is going to emerge instantly in like the supple, really soft, kind of green, leafy type of edibles during the spring, because everything's re-emerging. It didn't turn into a stem yet. It's not hard. It hasn't had its growth. It's all in that real micro phase, micro leaf, micro greens, micro plant, micro grass, everything that's coming up, emerging is like a supple, leafy green for these next month and a half or so. But, you know, you're thinking about, we're going to have to really move forward the conversation of how we are going to grow enough food here. You know, you can't live off the lettuce. It's a great way to supplement. So when California says, oh, we're having a lettuce shortage, your lettuce is now $12 for a little bag of you know, whether it be spinach or lettuce leaves, doesn't matter. You shouldn't be spending that money. You can grow all of that yourself so easily at home. And we talked about that last hour. But even though there was a garden trying to be grown in that zone in Seattle, they didn't know what they were doing. And that's the thing that, see, even if the solutions are out there, a lot of people don't know what they're doing. Like, how do you get the correct information? Like, dude, you guys need to go to the supermarket and, you know, break the windows and get in and grab some beans off the shelf, preferably black-eyed peas, so we can turn those into microgreens in trays, and go get the amaranth so you can sprout that out. And if you can find unrefined millet or sorghum in a store or spelt, we can grow fields of that. Now go raid the supermarket. Go do your damage, Antifa, whatever. Now go get us food so we can come back and get the seed to plant the food. Like, that wasn't taught. It was just like, we got some plants laying around. Here's a good marigold. Like, awesome. You know, the value of marigolds to keep insect pests away is invaluable. You should be growing an entire row of like 50 marigold plants around wherever your beds are. You should be doing that. You'll have no pests if you do that. And you'll have a beautiful, yellow, golden, gold, dark gold, whatever perimeter around your whole garden, but that thing will be protected because so many insects, don't like the smell, and a lot of wasps come in on those things. So there's some attackers from the air that go in on caterpillars and different types of like worms that might be there, slugs, just aphids, whatever eats those things. But think about natural protection for your plants where you're not spending the money on the pesticide. And then at the end of the year, what do you want to do with the marigolds? Well, if you take all the marigold heads that you grew to protect your plants, and even through the year, you're going to want to trim those because they're going to grow into multiples. You want to trim those, save them in a jar somewhere, save all of them. Because eventually you'll get to a big enough batch where then you can boil that and reduce that down into a tincture, which is a natural antibiotic. And you save that in a little 1 or 2 ounce tincture jar with a little dropper. And you put it on your cut, just like you would Neosporin or something. So you see, these are the kind of solutions that need to be taught out there. But, even what you would think is, quote unquote, an adult with all Antifa taken over out there in Oregon, in Seattle, and that zone set up, those were all adults. You think they would know that how to grow food and not put houseplants out on their garden out there. That is, I saw those same images and I was thinking, how was that possible that they didn't know that those were not edibles? And how do they, I'm looking at them at just the most rudimentary gardening techniques. If you put plastic under all of your, what was mulch or topsoil, whatever they had there, and then you plant it into that, like the roots won't go through the plastic. And I was thinking, oh, is that even possible that they would put that on? I'm still baffled by that. And the reason I say is, going into this food famine that we're heading into, a lot of people don't have the skills to make it through. And even though they think they might, they have the wrong interpretation of how to grow food or what food is. I think we're going to lose the plot here because we're going to have to put every single possible grandparent or trick or whatever. Grandparents always had the best sayings for knowing how the weather's going to move, or they had the idea on how to store things, store seeds, can stuff, jar stuff up, dehydrate things, whatever. I don't think we have that knowledge. I don't know how many, in a true famine situation, how many people you think, Ransom, percentage-wise, could grow their own food and advise a community enough to bring up food production so nobody will starve and thrive during that time. Not just survive and scrape by, that's not living, but really have enough knowledge to pass on and teach and have everybody work together and then find the seeds and get it in the ground and irrigate and do all that stuff, soil types, etc., to be able to put out something so massive that nobody starves and it's almost like a Thanksgiving feast every day, because you have that much food coming out with the community. I don't know, and that's like a 1% around the world, maybe.
Yeah, I think it'll be more than that. Actually, I think that more people would have success that didn't even think that they would if they just tried. Because I have to admit, I knew nothing about it other than growing a certain kind of plant in the past. Like I've only ever grew one plant, right? So gardening was a totally new experience for me. And then I started growing, right away. And I failed at a lot of stuff I tried to do. And then the next year I failed at other stuff. But I'm pretty confident this year that even with those 2 years with failures, I had bumper amounts of food with very little effort. So I think if one person teaches another person how to do it, and then that person also does it, it wouldn't take that long. And it's really funny that you were talking about the flowers, because that's literally one of the things I did today. I went around and gathered up all of the old flowers from last year that I had that I planted everywhere, which was kind of like the first time introducing all these new different kind of flowers. I had a bunch of hollyhocks, but I have all these new flowers, including marigolds and all of these other things that people have been sending me seeds, that my yard's going to be like a botanical garden almost. It just from all these seeds blowing around. And then I clipped all of those flower heads off, just like you were talking about, cosmos, all kinds of flowers do that. And I made a video, I haven't posted it yet, about that exact thing. And I put it all in a bucket, just some stuff that you could start doing early pre-spring and then right into spring. And the more flowers you have, the more insects you have, and the more insects you have, the better your food does. And that's just how it works there. And also, I wanted to talk about companion farming. Um, I got into that last year and I wanted to know about it, and I tried the Three Sisters. It didn't really work out, but I realized that other things can be used in a similar way. Like you get all these beans and vines and different things, and if you're growing them next to any kind of plant, whether it's flowers or food that has really strong stalks, those vines go up and you have just food filling up three-dimensional space instead of maybe a couple melons on the ground. You got melons dangling from the fence. You got melons dangling off flowers. You got peppers growing under the shade. It's a really cool thing to make a little universe, kind of. And that's how I look at it. And each one of these plants are like pets, and I try to figure out, what's going wrong with them. And then I'll even move them if you have to. A lot of these plants will be all right if you move them only once or twice. I wouldn't suggest doing it too many more times than that. But as long as they're not too big, you can move them to a place that they're doing better. What are some other kind of companion farming? Like I've noticed tomatoes and melons go great together. The tomatoes kind of need to be tied off in a way. And if you have melons growing up the fence, they'll attach themselves to the tomatoes without strangling them. So you don't really have to worry about that. I found no instances where the melon strangled out the tomatoes. It actually helped it. And then each one of those little tied vines from the tomatoes grew a bunch of tomatoes on there along right next to melons. And, you got squash growing and corn and beans growing up the stalk. I mean, there's so many different things that you can companion farm. And what's really funny is when you get started farming, there are all these people come out of the woodwork that either are curious about farming or they wanted to grow some food at their house. I found that to be the case with my neighbors. A lot of them got a little curious and they started their own gardens and, kind of like a competition. It's funny, but if everybody on the block is growing food when hard times hit, it just really isn't that hard. And I know a lot of places during the Great Depression actually didn't feel it so bad because they lived in areas that they had okay farming still and they had plenty of vegetables to eat. And they were making soups. It was in the cities that you have these big soup kitchens, and we actually have that today. They just disguised it, and it's the food stamp program or welfare. And I've seen articles now where they're about to start a similar program for heavily, leftist areas where they're getting taxpayers to pay the poor people for the gas money that they need because the gas prices are skyrocketing. And it's so funny that every little program the government gives you is to trap people. And right now in the cities, you have digital soup kitchens. That's what it is. It's a digital soup line. And you go in there. So what happens one day, all of a sudden, the money's worth nothing. Guess what happens to all those government benefits? They are worth nothing either, and they're not coming anymore. And then you have all of these people that have become accustomed to the stimuluses and welfare and different avenues of help, which, in a good society, we should have those things for the needy, but it's moved over to where the needy have decided to do that as a form of existence and living. And we can't do that. You have to exert a little bit of work, even when you're growing food. And I mean minimal. So imagine if you just spent all day hammering that out, where you're just hanging out with the plants, basically, or your animals. I mean, don't get me wrong. The ranchers are just as important as the crop growers.
Yeah, you're going to need both. And it's good to pass knowledge on. Imagine, I'll take you back to that same scenario in Seattle when they took the zone over there. Well, that's like the most connected crew on the planet with, tech. Everybody's got the mobile or the, smartphone. Everybody's connected to the internet. So what the task should have been is this plant here, take a photo of it, match up the photo, find the species, see if it's an edible. If it's an edible, can you split it? And then how do you grow it? And you plant it out here. And that's just like 2 or 3 people's thing, is just this one plant. Like each person's get the crew together for that one plant only. So imagine what you would have come up with, like coleus or like is it echinacea or cosmos. Like what can you really use that for? And then compared to marigold, I mean, you're going to get a huge amount of information difference. And then that would be the speciality, is those people going at that just with that one task of that one plant, learning how to grow it, where to plant it, what it needs, if it's edible, and if it's not edible, then what are the medicinal uses for it? Because medicines are always useful, as I've heard through history. So if I know how to prepare a plant and turn it into the medicine itself, that should have been the way, instead of just plant everything. There needed more organization on the getting garden stuff together. But how do you really do that in a society where now it's, instead of, a one city comprised of one tiny zone, what if it's a whole country or a whole continent now? That's what I'm getting at. Like, at what point's the realization where A, the famine's here, and then B, that people actually move to action? See, everything's in the face now. And I'm just wondering, with this statement of Biden coming out here earlier today, talking to NATO, saying that there will be food shortages starting now. And they're for real, man, is what he said. And these are real. These are for real. Meaning that he let it slip. He said something else interesting in his like 2-minute thing. I got to go back and rewatch it again. I was in a hurry to get on the show tonight. But he said something very specific. Like you said, sometimes they just blurt out their plans and they let them go. Well, he had one of those gaffes or purposeful releases of about something in that little 2-minute speech there. But when the leader of a country comes out and says we're going into a food shortage, that's not reassuring for people. Like, this whole breakdown in supply chains of getting fertilizers and herbicides to the farmers made no sense to me either. Like, it should be a national emergency, production act, fertilizer and herbicide to get to the planting, to get those farmers what they need, plus free diesel fuel to get it in there. And it should be free for farmers. They shouldn't have to pay for damn diesel fuel. Really, they shouldn't. They're getting the food to you. They should have to pay zero costs on diesel fuels. Fuel should be free. And their supply chains need to be retooled immediately under a wartime, like you say, act, or what is it, Manhattan Project with government directive type of initiative to get seed, to get herbicide, to get fertilizer, to get repair parts, to get tires, and to get fuels, which would be free to those farmers to start making food. Like, for me, that is the number one national priority. And number two would be the fuels and the energy. Because with no food, we don't have, who cares about the energy or fuel? People aren't there. So when I look at this, and then he comes out tonight and says, we're going to have a food shortage. Why would you even tell the American people that? What kind of idiocy is that? As you're going to have, no. Under my world, 30 seconds after that, everything pivots immediately within 30 seconds of that statement to producing food and only food, and everything else ceases except for farm inputs. Farmers get their whatever they need to produce the food at any level they need to produce it, and zero cost loans for the farm machinery. And it should be a cessation of any sort of collections against them, whether it be whatever for taxes. They should pay no tax either. They're providing the food to keep the country alive. And an imbecile like this to come on and say we're going into food shortages, I don't care what your belief system in any type of political arena, doesn't make sense. But for a leader to come out and say you're going into a food shortage is so far beyond unacceptable. I don't care what country you're living in. You take responsibility and move the supply chains in a wartime fashion to make sure that doesn't happen, period. Like, that's idiocy coming out to say such a thing. Ridiculous. And we need, the person should have been fired on the spot for saying that. On the spot for saying such a thing. You'll have a food shortage in the largest growing food country in the entire planet, that we are going to come into a food shortage. Really? That is planned. That is not accidental. We are the largest food exporter on the planet for grains and meats. And he says we're going into a food shortage. How can that possibly be? We produce way more food than our country needs for everybody to eat like a king every night in this country. And somehow we're going into food shortages. Really? That is a planned collapse. And everybody listening, please understand that. A planned collapse, and America has a food shortage. I'm just going to stop because I'm going to keep running in circles here, Ransom.
I was wondering if you were hearing government helicopters flying by yet, because you start talking about shouldn't be taxed, and people should be able to use petroleum for the way they need to use it. That's all bad talk. And do you think this little green executive act where they're as they say, making it a defense in the defense arena is going to have something to do with whether or not farmers in the United States get any gas at all? Or are they going to be using that to, tell them they can't do that, like you were saying before, not just with solar panels, but with farm equipment? Oh, you have to do this much of, green energy, or you can't do it, and which further makes the food go up in price. And I think that may have something exactly to do with that, because it's no accident that they're skyrocketing gas prices. And we all know that there's a 200-year supply just in the United States for just us. I mean, we would have no problem for hundreds of years, maybe even more. And that's not counting coal, natural gas. There's really absolutely no reason for it. So you have to think to yourself exactly that it's a planned collapse. And there's really no other, angle you could get from the gas prices, the pandemic, the alleged threat of war, the food prices skyrocketing 3 years in a row, where, like we were telling you on this show, actually, that they were doing dry runs and, beta programs to get you used to rationing style supply. Like right now, I'm sure that there's a store that you go to and there's a product that you like, and it's just not always there that much. I mean, it's there some of the time, but it's not there all the time. That's just to get you used to the idea that your products aren't going to be there. And then when they actually aren't there, people start panicking. And of course, and things get weird, and things like that I predicted actually last year are already happening. There's people going around stealing gas right out of the gas tank. They're drilling holes in the bottom of it, filling up gas tanks, and taking off with it. Catalytic converters. All of this stuff is going on right now because of all of the falsities in the price of things, from rare earth elements all the way over to food. And I think you're right. I think that was a straight up threat to the U.S. that, you're going to have to deal with this, and this is what we're doing. And Russia's default. So if you don't get in line, like you had to get in line for COVID, if you don't get in line with this, hating Russia thing and getting on board with the latest, whatever it is, they could switch tomorrow. Maybe it'll be a new variant all of a sudden, and we all have to get locked down again, which is also something that I am predicting, because wouldn't it be convenient if a new variant came out right when the food shortages start happening, telling people that they need to stay in their homes? And then all of a sudden you got this unreal dystopic situation that happens overnight. And then, you know what? Why don't we just add the collapse of the fiat petrodollar, so we could restructure and save everyone with a one world order? Which, by the way, did you see that Biden also said that America is going to be leading the one world order? And he just straight up said that after years and years and years of telling people that they were conspiracy theorists and nuts. They openly brag or push it in your face that, yes, no, we are doing a one world order, and too bad. Deal with it. And if you're a good boy, we'll give you a nice little pass where you could travel. You won't have to wear your mask if you're vaccinated. And, you'll get special discounts at the stores, and maybe your uppity stores will have more supplies than, like the lower stores that are in the neighborhoods. And it's funny, they've been pushing this stuff in our face. The other day, Nancy Pelosi was on talking about how her and her husband don't get along because he likes to eat late. She likes to eat at 5:30 like a peasant. And these things keep slipping from these people. So when they tell you that food shortages are coming, I don't think that was an accident. I think that he wasn't supposed to say that yet. He was supposed to say that in a few months. And if you've been kind of trolling around like I have on the internet, there's a big suspicion. A lot of people are predicting that because of the higher ups are all of a sudden catching the what out of nowhere. And they've pushed all of this propaganda on us that it might be, maybe somebody really, really important all of a sudden comes down with it and is afflicted with it and gets moved out, so we can be distracted for that with months while the new president takes over And if you've seen her talk, you know that she's just an empty suit.
I can't respond to that. I don't know what a woman is, my man. But
You're not a biologist? Oh, I thought you were.
what I guess I'm a fuelologist talking about prohibition and alcohol on the farm fields and the farm machinery. Here's how the story. I'm gonna present another kind of maybe it relates to this topic, but how did we get from prohibition to here with the machinery and the fuels? So maybe I can wrap this from prohibition to now. I'm gonna give it a try. Do you mind? I'm gonna throw it to you.
Go right ahead.
In the night, prohibition. So if we step back to the Roaring 20s after World War I, by the way, which issued and ushered in the Federal Reserve and Jekyll Island, The Creature from Jekyll Island, great book. Who's that? Griffin wrote that book. Federal Reserves formed 1913. World War I breaks out, more debt issued, stock market booms after the war ends, and then we get into the Roaring 20s, and then the Great Depression, gold's confiscated, World War II starts, Bretton Woods Agreement, US dollar dominance planet-wide. But let's go back to the Roaring 20s because I want to sip the champagne, dancing the jitterbug. Imagine going into a speakeasy, how cool that would have been. Like if you had a time machine, I would love to drop back and go into the coolest speakeasy with the most rad music in the 1920s. In the happy environment, without all these devices and everybody, how cool it would have been. But the fuels, it was more about the fuels at the time. Because if you go back and trace farm history right into the 1920s also, you're going to find a parallel two sets of society moving forward. One was ragey racing, city life with alcohol filled, just unbelievable, off the scale parties of the time. They don't call it the Roaring 20s for nothing. But at the same time, this thing was coming out called gasoline, and so were these things called engines in cars and trucks and farm machines that could help you till more efficiently than using horses even 15 years prior. The thing was, when Rockefeller was trying to get this whole station like Tesla is now with all these electric pumps and recharging stations, there weren't enough. Just like we saw in California, that huge, gigantic line of people waiting to charge pumps with the refills on electric that take up to half an hour. Well, the same thing. There weren't enough fuel stations, so farmers were like, I'm just going to make my own. And how would you make your own? Well, it's called distilling, mainly grains, which would be corn or wheat, alcohol. What do you think your gasoline is? It's alcohol. Ethanol, you ever heard of that stuff before? Although it's damaging to an engine at 100%. So farmers would make their own fuels, but the engines are very, very, very different than they are now. That pure alcohol didn't damage the engine back then as it would now. They were clunky, big, giant piston, clunky engines compared to the, computer microchip driven, 1/100th of a second or 1/10th of a second, changes on your fuel ignition or something. Clunky engines weren't damaged by that. So the farmers were making their own fuels because at that time, Rockefeller bringing it out didn't have enough stations. And then it became that kind of feedback loop. Well, you can't build out the infrastructure fast enough, so we're just going to make our own fuels and we can still fill that into our farm machines and still grow. We don't need your product, basically. So Rockefeller, just like today, using the newspapers owning, buying, controlling narrative, put out this whole panic of alcoholism and sort of things of the parties are too crazy, they're disrupting society. I mean, it is so copy paste what we're seeing right now. It's ridiculous. And then the whole getting, as Soros would do and get a whole bunch of NGOs. Well, the same exact thing was happening at that time about getting NGOs and what could be considered community groups and community organization. And at that time, women's rights were coming to get the activism at that sort of thing. Oh, our husbands are drinking. We got to, they're going to disrupt society. We got to make alcohol illegal. Well, when they did that, they also cut off the full entire supply chain of farms making their own fuels for their machinery and 100% reliant on that distribution system from Rockefeller. If you didn't know, corn and wheat make fuel for free for farmers. But have you noticed how every machine has switched to diesel fuels now? So even a farmer growing corn can't put that in the machine. A farmer growing wheat cannot put that in a machine. A farmer growing sorghum, millet, buckwheat cannot also refine that and turn it into fuels for their machine. So that leaves soybean only to turn into biodiesel, which would then run a diesel vehicle. But when you're looking at the percentages of, say, soybean in the crops and the rotations on the year, percentage-wise, it doesn't work. See, the whole, I'm looking at this whole transition. I understand diesel has a little more torque, but yeah, all of the engines did. Look at the designs from back, even when Tesla was coming into electric motors. And even in the 1880s, when the first electric cars were invented and brought forward. The torque on the motors, yeah, it's been tweaked to run on diesel to get that extra, but take those motors back to when they both ran on diesel and alcohol, both, pure alcohol. And they were getting something called naphtha from an oil well. So when the oil, or now I should say natural gas drip, or an actual natural gas well, regular oil well dripped this condensate called naphtha, and the guys working on the fields, oil fields out there, not crop fields, but oil fields, oil patch, would save this stuff called naphtha, and they would drive around it with and refill their cars with it because it was so like 120 octane type stuff. And the same off of natural gas wells, when it gets really, really, really cold, that condensates, that dripping down, that is the same. So these engines back then ran on all that, from the biodiesel to the naphtha to the alcohols, and it didn't damage the engines, right? Depending on what they were, you still couldn't cross swap the alcohol and the diesel, but what they were running with, incredible amount. What you could put in the engines then, it's like what you can put in a ship now, man. They burn anything, including like almost bitumen and black tar from oil production. That's what we consider asphalt. Ships are burning that and just chugging along. Like it's unthinkable what their ships are burning compared to diesel, like motor fuels. Unbelievably different. But the narrative was the same. Demonize the product, get the alcohol deemed illegal by, first it was NGOs paid, narrative paid, Rockefeller paid, media paid, all to push the same narrative. Same end goal of stopping all fuels made from alcohol at the base level of home production under prohibition. So then it pushed everybody 100% over into the Rockefeller grips of, you got to buy our oil at the pump now. Now we can tax you. Now we can charge you by the gallon. And the same thing you're talking about, the green agenda here under the Manufacturing Act of whatever, War and Manufacturing Act, where everybody's going to be pushed into a green agenda. Same thing. You can't make your own fuels now. I think that's where we're going again. How many people are going to start making moonshine for fuel? The dogs are barking at something. I'll let you talk. I'm going to check out there real quick, okay?
All right. Yeah. So I was showing the audience here. I'll pop it out here. What I think is the future. Now, just imagine when these food shortages start taking place. What we're looking at is an indoor grow warehouse, and I mean it's big, and you can see this is just kind of a small production here, and you can see that it's growing a lot of stuff. So I don't know how many people that could sustain with some meat. But you could imagine that these elites, they have a capability to keep the power running no matter what happens, no matter what kind of, attack, supposedly by malware or hacking us or cyber attacking us or the power going out. I could almost guarantee you that there are elite people that have thought of these scenarios and they have big warehouses like this. The trick is that you don't have to have all of this indoor thing unless we're about to go into a bizarrely low sun activity, time, which we might, if we continually have these big eruptions in this next kind of time period, which I think the elite are pretty sharp on, and they know all there is to know about the grand solar minimum and the cycle that we're in. So you could bet that they planned for stuff like this. And you can look at that. That's beautiful right there. I know radio people can't hear it. So we're just looking at endless rows of UV lighting and shelves stacked vertically with each row inside of it growing some kind of edible nutrient. And it just looks luxurious. I hope to have my outside garden look like this, but this is kind of the high-tech thing in a way that the transhumans are moving away from regular people. People at the store is where they hunt their food. It's not like prehistoric times. So when the store is empty, there are millions, if not billions of people that really just don't know the direction to look. And many of them don't grow their own food. And even those who do grow their own food, like myself included, probably don't grow enough food for, long-term, survival. So there's got to be techniques to expand this. And I don't see how really people are going to go too far into the next phase and keep culture without having some kind of community that barters with each other and grows different things. And, obviously having some kind of rancher friend. Yeah, get that. You got to have the beef. You got to have the testosterone for men, which means you have to have animal fats. So it would behoove of anyone listening, with the president of the United States claiming that we are going into food scarcity, food shortages, and that it's going to be a big deal and a real deal. I would suggest that you start getting some kind of protein supplements, if it's not bags upon bags of beans and lentils, which ironically is in the headlines telling you to do so. So I think there's going to be a big push about this food coming in the near future, where the grocery stores are not offering food, and also probably, roping off the areas to sell seeds and stuff. If you remember, they did that at the beginning of the pandemic. So you can see that we could be moving into this time. So I would suggest that you get some kind of condensed plant fiber. If you're not someone that's growing food, at least you could stock up on plant fiber, a protein powder of some kind, dried meats, beans, and things that you could possibly get. And also, I would look into a life straw or some gravity-fed water cleaning, situation for you, in case there actually is things like cyber attacks, power outages. These are just things that you should already be thinking about in terms of natural disasters that happen on a regular. And look at what the elite are probably going to be eating. All these nice greens, organic. Look at that spinach, kale, etc. Strawberries. And they have these facilities all over the place, but these things cannot run without electricity. So if the administration of the country you live in is crunching self-sustaining energy independence, places like this will not be able to afford to operate pumping out this much electricity unless the government starts picking winners and losers, which it sounded like, according to their new executive order, that they're going to be doing in the near future. So if you combine the president of the United States talking about taking over the green sector of our economy with the Defense Department, and also at the same time warning people that food shortages are coming and it's going to be real, you might want to actually take that serious. Or you could just, assume that maybe bumbling Biden just had a Alzheimer moment and forgot where he was, because he has got himself lost in the hedges outside of the White House. So you could take that with a grain of salt. But in my opinion, he kind of jumped the gun and may have told the public something that wasn't going to be announced yet. That's just my opinion. So David, are you back?
Yeah, I had, was just deep in thought when you were talking there for the last minute. Yeah, how do we get to this point where there's food shortages and they're telling people there's food shortages? By that means it's almost as if they're creating the artificial shortage so people will run out and buy a huge amount of food, knowing the supply chains are a bit broken and won't catch up with the resupply, which will create greater shortages. And when people see it with their own eyes, instead of buying one, they're going to buy two or three because they see the rest of the shelves are starting to get empty. And it's going to be that feedback spiral. Remember that toilet paper thing? like multiply it by 100 now, but for real food. And
Yeah,
it,
they get that extra cha-ching moment on everyone too, where they got all of those extra millions real fast.
yeah, because prices aren't going to come down. We're getting into a hyperinflationary base beginning here because things are running now at 10% a month. And, they've been trying to mask figures, but almost everywhere in the world and the U.S. will shortly be after this, looking at what's it been 3 months now, and you're already looking at 10, 12, 15% inflation just for the year beginning here. So, some places it's even higher, 30, 35, 40%. So you're looking at double digit inflation pretty much across the globe, masked by many, government statistics, but shadow stats and sort of thing. They show you it's way up there. So we're already at the beginning. If you're running double digit inflation on month by month basis, I mean, come on, you're starting to get into hyperinflation. So with that being said, coming into food shortages like Biden's talking about, if the money hyperinflates, people move to the petro Bitcoin and the US dollar is dumped, well, you're just not going to have the money for the cash. You're not going to have it for the food, I should say, the cash for the food. So when I heard the dogs barking, the coyotes I could hear up the valley. And that sets the dogs off all up and down the valley because I don't know what it is. Spring's here. The coyotes are moving through. They're much louder. They don't have the pups yet because the pups have a very different sound than the adults do when you're listening. And you can hear them individual too. You'll hear there's 7 of them or 6 of them. They all have a different call. It's the same variant of the call, but they each have a slightly different sound. And you can tell, okay, that was the female. Those are the guys up there. Those 2 guys. Oh, those are the pups. You tell how many females are up there, how many males are up there, and you get okay, there's like 8 or 10 or 7 or 6 or whatever in that pack, because actually you can hear the sound difference of them, but they're way down the valley tonight. But all the dogs are freaking already because we got the coyotes. And you might, oh, coyotes are so cute. No, they're not cute because they steal your chickens and goats, and they kill your dogs if they get into a pack. So, you're going to need protection across the property where you're at. If you're going to grow food, hold food, do animal husbandry, get chicken laying eggs or rabbits or whatever, somebody else is going to want that because they're hungry and they know it's worth way, way, way more if they can get it back to a city. See, there's two ways these food shortages pan out with marauders coming around. Is one, is they just want to steal the thing and then go sell it back into a higher price market. So steal some goats and chickens, they'll run it back into a bigger city and sell it for, 20, 30, 50 times the price they stole it for. Or another thing, they're super, super starving with their families and they're just stealing your stuff to eat because they're going to starve to death. And they decide to steal your stuff to eat instead of starving. Okay, so you get that random, you're going to get one of those variants. And I'm not going to say it's 100% that way or 100% that way, but you're going to get some sort of blend of those. Those will be the main stories of why somebody was stealing something. But dogs, see, you need the dogs to protect because dogs are going to alert you every time. So yes, they're alerting us to coyotes tonight. But they would also be barking if somebody come out to the chicken coop, try to take a couple guineas, or what about your goats? Coyotes are bad news anyway. So now you're talking about 2 different types of predators, hungry humans and then coyotes. No different, but the humans have far better dexterity to steal your stuff than a coyote does. A primate is going to open up the lock or the device to swing open a gate, and a coyote won't. A primate is going to roll in and use 2 hands and muffle sounds and try to get away faster than coyotes who don't understand except for just jump on it, grab it, try to make it stay quiet, rip it out of the wire cage and hope for the best. Primates don't do that. They do work a little bit different, operate a little bit differently. But still, dogs will alert you to primates or coyotes both. And when you're looking at it to protect your food, I don't know. So every time, a lot of times people tell your dog, shut up, be quiet, be quiet, stop barking, No, you know what? Every time right now, when I go outside, I pet them and I thank them for showing me and alerting us that the coyotes were there. I was like, oh, thanks for telling us. I really talk to them like that. Hey, thanks for barking and telling me the coyotes are down there. Because I think they understand the word coyote with that sound now. And they understand that every time they bark, I come out and pet them when they bark when there's coyotes. So I set up that whole thing since these dogs have been around. It's that same kind of repeat, reward, repeat, So they bark when coyotes come. I go out and pet them, play a little bit, and come back in and say thanks. So that's easy. Coyotes, they make sound. You understand? You can put that stimulus there. Pavlov's dog. You hear a bark, you bark. Owner comes out, give you a snack, give you a little pet. Thanks for doing it. Pavlov's dog, literally. But you know, when dogs first understand that there's like primate marauders out there, how's that going to be from like a friendly neighbor that came over and dogs are jumping like, hey, I want to play, throw me the frisbee, to somebody rocking up on your land and trying to steal your food or break into your grain storage area or break into your tool shed, because tools are going to get super expensive too. I highly advise anybody out there, seriously, go out and buy at least 2 of everything that you think you'll need for simple rudimentary gardening. But keep in mind that things are going to break and you're going to have to learn how to repair them, from the handles to the blades. And you'll find that the older steel and the older tools that you can find at estate sales, the metal is actually much stronger on those olden garden tools that are all they need is really a new handle, but you're looking for the strength of the metal. You got to think of something that was sold in the late 1950s, early 1960s, was like, that was one garden tool meant to last a lifetime. So gardening tools will be another thing to protect. And machines. Can you imagine if you had a rototiller or like a tiller, either front tiller, stand behind, or actually push behind back tines on that? I mean, can you imagine how valuable that would be? Because you can actually get the gardens up and running 50 times faster than using humans to get that. So, you know, you're going to spend 5-6 hours to chop it up and, you know, blend and do all these things that you would do to get your garden pre-tilled, when you can do it in 20 minutes with a rototiller. Like, these kind of machines are going to become incredibly valuable. Anything that will speed up growing food and reduce the amount of calories spent to grow said food. Like, you're going to have to protect that. And then I'm looking and going, all right, dogs, how do you train them against somebody coming on the property to take your food? Okay, that's one set of variable, but that, you know, I don't know. Coyotes are one thing, human predators are another. Let's just say primate predators. It's going to be very different. Very, a lot of weird choices are going to have to be made during this time, I think.
Hey, you know, maybe you could take a page from Monsanto and all them. I don't know if you know this, but because the bugs get sick off of most of their plants in the fields, they plant another field with regular, crops so that the insects won't all die off. And maybe we could do that. We could just, you hide the good food in and out of little areas, and then you just put a little patch of, some something easy to grow that people can pick, and send them off in another direction, almost like a fruit trail away from your place, and stuff like that. It's hard to imagine how it's going to get. If you don't live by a city, you're already ahead of the game, but there are people that do wonder. And like I was showing earlier to the audience, there are already people stealing, massive waves of people taking gasoline and just anything they can get their hands on. So you know that those tools out there that you're talking about, those are going to be a real commodity. And not only that, you have to guard your tools because they're going to be something that people want also. So that's a really bizarre situation we're going in, that we're America. We're the first world, country, the freedom, full of freedom. We're all brave over here. And yet we've been reduced down to kind of a idiocracy state, where no one really knows how to do anything. And I did see this coming for a while. I remember when I was in my 30s and I was doing a lot of construction jobs and moving around, doing different stuff from concrete to framing and, commercial buildings. I got to do a lot of that. I learned how to do electricity from the electricians on site because they were bored. But what I realized, doing all this stuff, is that the people that were younger than me would come to work and they didn't know what tools were called. They didn't know how to use a measuring tape. They had no idea what any of the equipment did, what it was called, how you ran it. And a lot of these kids just came out of a technical school or college, and some of them even had degrees and still had to get a job in which they didn't even fit in and understand the basic workings. Like, you could have somebody that didn't even get their GED come in that grew up on a farm and they know what all of that stuff is, versus somebody that just it's not really their fault. I guess they just never had the real world experience of using their two hands to work, which is how you learn all of these things. So there's going to be some really savvy children come out ahead of this next phase because their parents showed them how to do things, from using tools to growing food. So we are, certain people are in a good place. I mean, not to be super doom and gloom. I think a lot of people are in a good position right now. Unfortunately, it's kind of like investing in, like war bonds or whatever, or vice stuff, knowing that when things are going bad, that certain people can do good because everyone else is doing bad. It's kind of a fact that we live in our world. But if you can arrange yourself to not, try to be taking from other people, I think that you could produce your own stuff. I don't know what's going to happen, though, when people get hungry. That's actually when I think we'll get to see the ugly side of America.
Yeah, I had a talk with my neighbor, ex-Army guy, and what he was saying on the base simple is, if people start to come out to the countryside to look for things, their cars are going to run out of gas because they took that last step of belief that I'm going to run out of my gas at the exact place I'm supposed to stop, and then I'll look from right there because I believe God had made me run out of gas at that point, so that's my start point. So at some point, they're going to come across, in the beginning, everybody's going to have their supplies, right? So they're going to come across homes, and maybe if they get fended off, they're going to look for cars so they can go to other places. So a lot of I'm going to say a good 50% of the people in the countryside don't leave their cars or park them in a garage, like in the front of your house. A lot of times garage is used for storage, for machines, tool shed, workbench, whatever, in the middle of the garage. But that was the thing that was brought to my attention was, so many cars are sitting outside here in the countryside that, an escape vehicle for somebody else, they might, try to swoop your car out of there as a value thing, because, most people in the countryside keep their tanks pretty full comparatively to the city. Like, I'll get a few bucks when I'm going to work, versus what if it snows out here and you're stuck for a week and there's no help and you're still running around doing things, you're just in a local area, you need gas. Everybody's gassed up. So a treat for somebody that would be marauding would be a vehicle full of gas that they could get away with and move another 300 miles. So protecting your automobile is going to be an incredibly valuable skill as well, because think about stealing horses back in the day. Same thing, stealing cars. Now, they might just try to move through the house or grab some people in the house just to get the keys to get the car to get away. At that point, they're spooked, they're scared, they just want to get out of there, but they don't have a way to get out except stealing your car. And they'll do anything they can to get your car to get out of there. Because now neighbors are running to help neighbors and like, shit, we got to get out of here. And cars are going to be a very valuable thing too. So it wasn't so much about, yes, people will try to get the food in the house. Yes, people will try to get to your gardens eventually, not in the beginning, but as the things progress and move, the car is going to become very valuable, especially if it's full of fuel. So I've been told that was what we talked about in a real situation, like crazy. Like you think it might be, one car, people come cruising out to your place. No, it'll be like a SUV, 4 or 5 SUVs full of 6 guys inside, heavily armed, come out to your place. Then what? You got 30 assailants coming in. Then what? Those are the things, like, because he saw action over in Somalia, and he was telling me like they don't roll in ones at all, ever, when they're going to marauding, ever. It's always multiples, and that's how they swoop into a village. They, driving the pickups with the mounted artillery or mounted guns on the back, and then go in with 200 guys in a single, everybody racing at full speed, slamming on the brakes, dust spinning everywhere, and then 200 guys jump out all armed, like, get out, yeah. That's how it would go down here too, or more organized peoples. But there's going to be a bunch of individuals running around trying to get transpo. So expect that. Yeah, anyway, Ransom, sign us off, man. We got about 2 minutes left.
Well, I was just thinking with that breakdown there, that totally convinced me that there's absolutely no reason to have 30 rounds or more. Absolutely none at all.
No, you should just destroy those things. You should Turn them. You should turn them in, or just run them over with your car and make sure they get flattened so nobody can use them. David Dubine signing off. Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films. Peace, man. Thanks for joining tonight. See you next week. And this week, learn how to plant some, learn how to grow something, learn how to turn a flower into a medicinal tea.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.